Ghana Fwe, Mechiamo, my greetings to all of you. I doff my imaginary hat to you this morning. It is that time of the morning where I welcome you back on the AM show and serve you hot. We're going to dish it out, water, on bland thoughts. And this morning I've titled it, Ghanaian Leaders versus Ghanaian Problems. Why our woes remain constant. Ghanaian leaders versus Ghanaian problems. Why our woes remain constant. But before I get to the woes, when there are bright spots, we ought to elaborate on them. And that is why this morning, I just want to thank Mr. President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, together with all those involved, the Ministry for Tourism, Arts and Culture, among others, for memorializing the Osajefo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and the 29-year-old architect who put together everything. That is how we should go as a country, rather than what we were doing back then, burning Nkrumah's books, all in the name of political capital. Trying to what? Take his life in Kulungugu, all those things we did. This is a good legacy that you are leaving, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. We know your position as far as he is concerned, but to go this extra mile to refurbish the mausoleum at a cost of 30 million Ghana cedis, well, but it's still very good. I've taken a good look at the place and it is refreshing. But Mr. President, there's a whole lot more that has to be done if we're going to get the 1 million tourists into our country, like you're saying, just for the mausoleum. In Crawford, there's much more we can do there. Where he used to go and rest in the northern belt of the country. Other things that we can use and gain touristic capital from them. So while I salute you, Mr. President, for giving dignity to the Osajefo, who is the founder of our country. I know you dispute that because they have the big six there and all of that. But the founder of our country, I still tell you that there is more to be done. And moving away from there, even as I address our crucial issues in this country, I will reflect on a quote by Nkrumah, since we're talking Nkrumah. He says, it is clear that we must find an African solution to our problems and that this can only be found in African unity. Divided we are weak, united Africa could become one of the greatest forces for good in the world. But even right here in Ghana, we are so disunited, Mr. President. And part of that is on the back of you yourself and your politics. And the party you stand with, the New Patriotic Party, and what you've espoused, what was supposed to be the National Patriotic Party, and through a slip, it became the New Patriotic Party, if you don't know the history. And this is why I say this, starting off the conversation from the ratings agencies. So here is what the rhetoric that we've seen as far as these ratings agencies, S&P, Standard & Poor's, Fitch, Moody's, among others. This is what our leadership has been saying. And I just want us to go down memory lane right after this, and then we'll see whether they are justified in saying what they did. I know that lady from the UN had her say, basically, in recent times. But let's listen to them. Ken Oforiatta says, it is time for Africa to have its own credit rating agency. I don't have a problem with that. However, major challenges such as systemic bias and limited data are still a hindrance. Pay attention to those words. Systemic bias, systemic. It's constant. Limited data are still a hindrance. Okay, no problem. Then Mr. President says, difficulties in economy were exacerbated by the reckless behavior of ratings agencies that engaged in downgrades, shutting Ghana out of the capital market, and turning the liquidity crises into solvency crises. But I have a question for you, Mr. President. Shutting Ghana out of the capital market, are you trying to say that without the capital market, our economy will go bomb blast down the toilet, down the sink? Is that what you're saying? Is that why you said in recent times that on the back of these latest developments and the IMF money we had got, we'll be going back to the capital market? We can't go there, Mr. President. I hope you get your memo right. Let's go to the next slide. Now let's look historically at the antecedents and whether the rhetoric from the slide before is the truth. 2018, ratings rapidly improved, and this was our rhetoric. Ratings rapidly improved due to stability, reforms, and strategies. You were benefiting from the IMF program from the period before. But you said ratings have rapidly improved due to stability, reforms, and strategies. That year we got $2 billion. 2019, our rhetoric was credit performance has improved with all the credit rating agencies upgrading or affirming. We were happy. $3 billion was what we got from the capital market. 2020, Moody's upgraded our outlook and S&P maintained our rating. We got another whopping $3 billion and we were riding on. It was roll on. Yeah, good times. 2021, Ghana's ratings steady still in 2021 due to COVID-19 measures by government. We got 3.02 billion. We're still happy. But then you come to 2022, 2023. And now, because we've been thrown out of the Eurobond market, now the rating agencies are reckless and not favorable to African economies. You be the judge. When the times were rosy, we applauded them. We sided with what they said. Look at the trajectory. 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, even in 2021, they were giving us favorable ratings. But when we're doing reckless things, we ourselves were doing reckless things with our economy, and they told us that your economy is in the toilet, then we're thrown out of the Eurobond market, and then we said they are being reckless. Who has been reckless? Even if they have been reckless, who has been more reckless? You or the ratings agencies? It will only reflect what you put out. Let's go to the next slide. But now, listen to Dr. Richmond Etuahene, researcher, banking consultant, on what he has to say about this. He says, there is no evidence from both qualitative and quantitative data review that ratings agencies S&P, Moody's, and Fitch have been reckless in downgrading the Ghanaian economy. I'm not saying it. I'm not a banker. Here's someone in the thick of things, and he's saying that. There is no shred of evidence from both quantitative and qualitative data review that ratings agencies S&P, Moody's, and Fitch have been reckless in downgrading the Ghanaian economy. In fact, he says, rating agencies are an integral part of modern capital markets, and low economic growth, rising debt must be addressed. That is where we ought to be looking, Mr. President. Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, that is where you ought to be looking. Not talking about during the election petition in 2008 onwards, someone didn't come and say, "It drew me so." No, when it comes to the economy, focus on that. Now, in terms, just segueing quickly from the economy and all the talk, to talk about the Jachi case. You know, in recent times, there have been many developments. So I want to bring it up and look at it from a certain perspective. The Domahene has appealed to President Akufo-Addo to intervene in Kweson's prosecution. He has also urged a halt to the trial, calling for a nolle prosequi, basically bringing a cessation to the trial. He believes prosecution won't benefit Ghana's unity or development and says continuing the case is an insult to Ghanaians. And on this point, believing prosecution won't benefit Ghana's unity or development. Do you remember the words of Osafo Marfo, senior minister, when it came to Aisha Huang, who had devastated our environment, milked it of what did not belong to her? When people were calling for her trial, for the court process to be exhausted, what did he say? Will it bring development to us? Will it bring unity to us? Well, how about this? The people of Asin North have voted, reinforcing their vote. Will that bring unity? Will it bring development? Next slide. Here are some other thoughts that have been espoused. Sam Okujato, my senior friend. He describes the comments of the Domahene as senseless and wrong. I blame him, and that's what he says. He has even gone as far as calling for the Domahene's resignation or dismissal as a judicial member, a member of the bench, because he's a high court judge. For those who don't know, I even assumed at the point that he was no longer. He is a high court judge. But then we have the Ghana Bar Association also, and as a student of the law, sometimes I feel, someone was asking me recently, the Ghana Bar Association, there are things they ought to talk about sometimes. They will never talk about them. But some things, all of a sudden, you see them talking about them. But that's the Ghana Bar Association. Let's leave them to do their bit. The GBA says, the PRO criticized the Domahene's decision to comment at that forum. And then he said the suggestion of halting the prosecution is inappropriate, and that the Attorney General has the sole power to file a nolle prosequi. No one said he didn't. Next slide. But here's an interesting perspective. A former Attorney General and Minister of Justice, also a one-time High Commissioner to Canada. Here's what he says. Entering a nolle prosequi, and by the way, he served under the MPP, would demonstrate maturity, but it requires collective decision-making. Collective decision-making. Convicting the accused may lead to another by-election and affect future elections. Are we thinking of this? While I'm not saying the law shouldn't run its course, I'm also thinking you use your head in instances. Are we thinking of this as well? Another cost? Consider the perception of the MPP by the people of Asin North. And then again, focus on the potential consequences and public sentiment before making decisions. I hope our leaders are thinking through these matters while they sit on their high horses. Sometimes you must dismount, come off your horse, come to the level of the grassroots, listen to the ordinary people. Because there are different ways that some people, the ordinary people, the masses, the hoi polloi, can get you. But in this bit, as well, I need to chastise these two gentlemen. Before the Asin North vote, Mr. President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, a lawyer, said, we vote for people to go to Parliament to work. How can he work from prison? He here, Jachi Kwesen. How can he work from prison? Really? So don't vote for someone who will end up in jail. Vote for someone who can work to improve your lives. Mr. President. And I have people of the MPP trying to say this is not prejudicial. How prejudicial can it get? Blimey! This is not prejudicial? He says, we vote for people to go to Parliament to work. How can he work from prison? So don't vote for someone who will end up in jail. End up. Concluded. Vote for someone who can work to improve your lives. Bravo, Mr. President. Or better still, no bravo. This was way below the belt. And you are part of why people are now taking on the legal system and why government business is grinding to a halt in Parliament. You heard what the MPs from the minority side said. They said you are prejudicing the courts. If you hadn't said this, probably the walkouts that they are staging going to court would not be happening. It's on you, your head. On your head, Mr. President. Now, John Dramani Mahama, two wrongs don't make a right. And you would think that former president would season his thoughts better with the salt of wisdom. Yes, I said it. Because while this was egregious, this is excruciatingly bad as well. Because what these two leaders have done, he will go to jail. He will not go to jail. This categorical statement, and it is a lie, flies in the face of everything that is justicial, everything that the courts do. We like boxing the courts. While I have my own problem with our judicial system and the court system, we like boxing the courts into a tight corner. MPP and NDC, you people should stop that. It's nonsensical. Now, this one says he will not go to jail. This one says he will go to jail. So which is which? If you put the court in that situation, like the Pharisees and the rest tried Jesus. So if he goes this way, they'll catch him. If the court goes that way, they'll catch the court. The two of you have caused it. Next slide. But now, moving from the political front, we've spoken about the economy, politics, and utterances that are reckless. Those are what are reckless, Mr. President, not what the rating agencies are doing. Let's wrap with our ECG debt payment situation. Ghana, follow me keenly. If you look at our debt, ECG's power sold and collected and power collected or resources collected in 2022, these are in billions. The ECG in its current state cannot pay 100% for power that it buys. That's according to John Jinapo. Those are comments from John Jinapo, Member of Parliament. So basically, out of 10, if ECG sells 10 billion, what they recoup is 7 billion, leaving a deficit of 3 billion. This is clearly unsustainable. But the solution is also not a wanton increment in tariffs. That is not the solution. More collection, a more effective and efficient system must be brought to bear. Plain and simple. Next slide. Now, if before we go to the next slide, let's listen to the ECG's boss, Dubik Mahama, on what he's been saying. And then the next slide will reflect whether we have the right situation. Let's watch this brief video.
We have an understanding on how to strip it and give them what we are supposed to give.
Mr. Jinapo.
The spokesperson for the IPPS is live on your program. Is that what they've agreed?
Yes. Yeah, I mean,
straightforward.
But you are actually right, Mr. Jinapo. Should I put that to him so that we can all be wiser? Right? Then you can come back in. Let's do that.
I don't know what Dr. Steve Material, because he's put up two issues. The first one had to do with legacy debt, that there was an agreement. The spokesperson for the IPP said no, they are not aware of that. Now there's a second one that says that they've come to an agreement on this month, July, how the bills will be treated, and that it will strip the bill down. And I'm saying the spokesperson for the IPPS is right here. Is that the agreement you had with them? I mean, Ghanaians want to know.
Yeah, but so let's ask him. Let's ask him. Stay with me, because it's your substantive turn. I promise you get that. But let's clarify that. Ms. Elikplem, is that your understanding?
No.
Okay, so explain.
He says no.
No, I wanted to. No, sorry, forgive me. Because of, let him explain why no. Mr. Elikplem, please, why no?
I have indicated that he made an offer to us based on going forward. And I said generally we are expecting a solution to all our outstanding. Now, he is making a point that he has engaged all the IPPs individually and have come to an agreement. And to the best of my knowledge, there was no agreement like that, because we have real-time information amongst ourselves. So I would be glad if we can confirm or clarify further.
There you have it. Which brings me to my next slide. Let's quickly get to that. So the ECG is saying that there is an agreement on payment. That's what Dubik Mahama is saying. Now, the chairman of the IPP chamber says no. So, which is which? Who's telling the truth and who's lying? Time will tell. But if you look at the timelines, okay, the IPP is threatening to shut down. October 2019, there was a threat. November 2020, another threat. July 2023, here we are again. There's a certain trajectory Ghana for. And we ought to rise up, because I know no one wants to go back to Dumso. Dumso was solved. If we go back to it, then I don't know what kind of leadership ineptitude that is. That is why I titled today's Blunt Thoughts what I did. Our problems, our leaders versus our problems, and why our woes remain constant. Now, to wrap the conversation, this is the mix. The IPPs produce 65% of their energy production in terms of thermal power, 40% of the total power production. So you see it there. And this is where I also have a problem, because solar constitutes a measly 1%. Something we really ought to be looking at. Solar is contributing a measly 1%. We ought to do way better than that as a country that is blessed with sunshine all year round. What are we doing up north? Look at the temperatures there. How can't we harvest it? Our Northern African brothers are doing that. 1% solar, 38% hydro. We've been so hydro reliant, but at least now we are getting that generational mix. 61% thermal. Ghana 4, we ought to sit up, because the IPP situation could affect your power. We dinya, asemeneba, mentium, And in terms of our political terrain, our economic terrain, our leaders, please look out for us, not just for yourselves and your political party interest. And that is why I'm going to end one more time by congratulating Mr. President for what he did with the Kwame Nkrumah Mausoleum and leave you with this quote by the Osajefo himself, Kwame Nkrumah. It reflects what some of what our leaders keep doing. He says, action without thought is empty. Action without thought is empty. My name is Benjamin Akapo. I say what I do out of no malice. I love Ghana. I'm a young person hoping for a better Ghana, not just then, but now. These are my blunt thoughts shared with you, raw, hot, unedited, undiluted. God richly bless our motherland Ghana and make her great and strong.